Welcome back to episode number 6 of the Epic Epoch podcast. Thank you to everyone who's here live on twitch.tv/PairThePig. Remember that when this episode is done, you can always catch us on YouTube on a playlist on Dread's YouTube channel, or you can also catch us on Spotify or whatever your podcast streaming application of choice is. So if you are watching on one of those other platforms, be sure to let us know. I would love to know where you're getting this information, where you're watching the podcast, and what kind of apps I guess you're using to make sure that things flow smoothly for you. So for this podcast here, I am joined once again by my co-host
Dread from Epic Builds.
Ooh, Dread, thank you so much for being here. And we even have a special guest this time around.
No, for you. Yeah, it's for you. You're the special guest.
You're the I'm supposed to say something there. I'm seeing Perry's like voice thing, like his face is throwing me completely off because I'm seeing him say stuff still, but he's not saying anything. Okay, I gotta stop looking at that. Yeah,
right.
I'm Lonestar Mcfluffin, by the way.
So Lonestar Mcfluffin, thank you so much for being here. We reached out to you at the very end of our last podcast because last week we finished off our discussion by talking about your YouTube video that you just recently published.
Yeah, I actually left right before you guys started talking about it, so I missed the whole thing. I had to cook dinner, but that's awesome that you guys talked about it.
Well, I'm just glad that kind of conversation is going on. I like watching build guides. I like seeing people break the game. But when I'm browsing YouTube, I like seeing like those conversational topics as well. So I know like you've done a couple of those. Lizard has done 1 or 2 in the past, and Dread, you've even started doing those too. So I think that's great. Just see more stuff like that on YouTube.
Yeah, I like doing them, but I'm scared to do them because what I need to start doing is putting more like positive ones in, because I feel like I'm constantly criticizing EHG and it gets this impression that like I hate them, which is 100% not it. It's just like, okay, here's these issues.
How that feels.
Yeah, here's these issues I need to talk about, but then I realize like the last 4 videos I've done that aren't build guides are just me ripping on EHG. I need to do something else here.
Oh, that's how I feel when like I talk about like uniques and stuff that are coming out or stuff. I just feel like I'm constantly being the mean person. I'm like, I'm just trying to help.
Me too. Yeah.
Honest.
Yeah. So, and by the way, thank you, Mike.
Before we get too far away from the beginning of this podcast here, I want to make sure maybe there's somebody in Twitch chat who doesn't know who Lonestar Mcfluffin is. Maybe there's someone who doesn't spend their time in Discord or Twitch or YouTube. Can you give us a quick description of like who you are, what you've been doing, where you come from with regards to Last Epoch?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I'm actually the longest standing streamer / content creator now, which means I'm old. I've been here since late alpha, and I mostly stream, but then of course I've gotten into more and more YouTube stuff as well. So I guess I'm kind of a hybrid now. I've got, I don't know how many hours in the game, well over 3,000, something like that. But yeah, I've been playing the game pretty much straight for well over 2 years now. I can't even keep track anymore how long it's been, but yeah, this is the game that I fell in love with and still do, despite the topic. Still do love the game.
And I want people to know that you are also a community tester for Last Epoch.
That's correct. Yep, I'm also a community tester, and what that means is there's just a group of us that ESG is invited to test builds before they go live to try to just make sure there's not any really broken stuff, unstable things, lots of whatever they need to be tested. We test it beforehand so that you guys don't have to deal with everything that's broken. I know sometimes it feels like there's no testing or whatever. Trust me, if it weren't for the CTs, it'd be worse. So CTs do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that the build you get is a lot more stable and a lot more balanced, and content's even better.
And that's not like an individual build like a Void Knight Devouring Orb character. That's like the build of the game itself.
Yeah, that's the patch, right? Sure. When the patches come out.
Excellent. And then the community testers, it's a relatively small group. It's like 10 people, something like that.
I don't know that I can give out how many current community testers there are. I think that's part of NDA, but I'm not sure. So I'll just refrain.
All right. I'll take your word on it then.
There's 2 of them.
There's only 2. That's crazy. What a distinguished group. So we have a handful of things that we'd like to talk about today, but I think the most pressing is the patch cycle that happens only on Wednesdays, which is the one day I don't stream. So I'm always behind on the patch cycle. I'm never online. I can't like give my hot takes and reactions right away. But we are on patch 085E, which fixed one of the items that I was abusing, using, getting 300,000 ward with. So I think first things first, because this was like the most recent thing, I would like to talk about the patch. So I guess I've been playing a little bit. Dread, I know you've been streaming as well. Mcfluffin, did we catch you at a bad time? Are you still playing Slowermancer and Diablo 2, or have you dove into this patch at all?
I have looked at the patch. I haven't done anything with the patch, but I'm sure I can get a decent idea of what's going on.
Stuff. Mainly,
it's like a lot of set item updates, right?
Yeah.
And trying to fix that ring, which still didn't really fix the ring, but at least made it a little bit less broken.
Yeah, speaking of things the community testers missed.
Listen, we don't test everything.
I know,
that's all I'm going to say about
teasing.
that. That's all I'm going to say is we don't test literally. I know you're not, but I just want to make it. Not everything that you guys see is tested by the CTs. I can neither confirm nor deny whether or not that ring was or not. But not everything is, and so
let's talk just for a moment about that ring. So it's a unique item. It's called Ashes of Mortality. It's a drop off of tier 1 Cremoris in the Soulfire Bastion, so it's really easy to get. And I guess a week and a half ago, when I was making use of it, I had a very low damage build. It was pretty bad. It was like Ignite Fireball, but I happened to be using 2 of these rings, and that was my entire investment into ward. And I had 300,000 ward, and I was totally unkillable. So instead of 13% chance to gain some ward whenever you hit an ignited enemy, it's been tailored a little bit now. So now it still gives you a good chunk of ward per ignite or dam stack on yourself. So that seems to be like something that the devs are trying to push, and you can see that with the Affliction of Pyre, the unique axe that's in the game as well. And you kind of get the sense that like we're supposed to be igniting ourselves. We're supposed to be like damming ourselves and getting ward based on that. But, even if it were just a 1% chance to gain 1 ward per ignite on the enemy, I have the feeling that like even that would be abusive. Even that would probably be too much. And it makes me wonder, why is this line of text even in the game? If it has to be that small a number, and like the proc chance itself, and like the ward, it's like 2 to 3 ward post nerf right now that you get per ignite on the enemy. If the number has to be that low, why is the number even there at all? Like every time that I talk about ward, I think about like ward per second items. So we have the new offhand item. I forget the name of it now, but it's the new offhand base type that gives you like ward per second.
Opulent Focus.
Opulent Focus is the one. And I think about like ward per second items, and they never seem busted. They seem like fine. They seem okay. There's the Vessel of Strife, which is probably the strongest ward per second item that's in the game right now. And I like that kind of stuff. But when we have like ward on skill use, ward on hit, it's just like begging to be broken in half.
And there's a very clear theme with why that happens, right? Like ward per second only scales with ward retention. That's it. The Vessel of Strife scales with ward retention and with regen. Therefore, it's got 2 scalars. You got to start doing the ward on hit stuff, and it's got more scalars. It's got attack speed on it as well. So there's just the more scalars you have on ward, the more busted it becomes, and it's just harder and harder to balance it.
It's even going to scale on like the number of monsters that you're hitting at the same time, right?
Yep.
It's like just pack size and arena stuff. So we'll see what Ashes of Mortality does in the future, like whether people still gravitate toward that in order to get 100,000 ward, or whether people just kind of leave it on the wayside now that it's been nerfed. So
they already are, by the way.
They're already getting high. Okay, great. We'll see what kinds of things happen with Ashes of Mortality in the future. But I wrote down 2 other items for this patch, things that kind of stood out for me. I did write down Ignite deals 5% more damage. And we're going to move past that because that's all I have to say about it. Yeah. Like, good, Ignite, 5% damage, great. So I wrote down the Xeric set. And the Xeric set is a 3-piece set that it has like you gain your potions no longer heal you, and you gain melee and throwing necrotic damage during like the next 4 seconds after you click on your potion. So it's this like kind of cool item, kind of cool set. I think the most notable thing about that to me when it was introduced to me, a year and a half ago when I started playing this game, is the boots have throwing crit multi on full health and melee crit multi on full health. And that, of course, double dips, quote unquote, if you're playing a Shadow Dagger build. So that's all I knew about this set in the past. But now it has huge flat dodge numbers. So you can play a dodge build if you want to like, use 2 of these items, get some big dodge numbers, it's like tier 10 dodge if you want to do the math. But on top of that, it's also you only need 2 of the items instead of 3 of the items in order to get that flat necrotic damage to melee attacks and throwing attacks, which I think is great. I think that's a pretty cool way of like opening it up.
I think that's one of the best changes they've ever introduced in terms of sets, where like even if it's a 3 set, just move the good stat to the 2 set and 2 set so that you get to choose 2 out of 3, and that introduces that kind of choosy kind of feel instead of like, oh, you're gonna use this set and this set only, these 3 pieces. No, you can use 2 out of 3, and you get to choose.
And you
I
can
think they
choose,
should just
like,
have.
go ahead.
I think they should have like a 2 set bonus. It's okay to have like 3 items, but just have a 2 set bonus so that you get to choose which 2, just like Dredd was saying. And there's just no incentive to wear all 3, and except unless the item itself is actually legitimately good, so you don't feel like you have this pressure to not get legendaries or whatnot.
But Mcfluffin, I want a themed build around Zarek, and I want to be rewarded for it.
Yeah, you still get the 2 set bonus, and then if you want to, if the 3rd set fits your theme, you can still wear it, but you don't feel like you have to have it.
Yeah, I agree. I was just
wait.
I know you're just being facetious.
When you're in chapter 9 and Zarek is helping you, Zarek has 100% endurance, so whenever he gets on low life, he takes no damage. Can I get that on a set item? I would totally include that in my build.
Actually, now that you bring that up, the Zarek set is like all based on dodge and stuff, but then like Zarek in the campaign both times is either focused on block or like that massive amount of endurance like you're talking about. We want some consistency.
That's a good point. That's not lore friendly at all.
Can we get 100,000% endurance or whatever?
Yeah, also it poisons. What's this like crit multi crap?
Hopefully during one of these dev streams in the future, they'll actually have like a lore person online, and we can just bombard them with questions like this. Like, have you ever considered that the lore and the block and the dodge is inconsistent?
Yeah, wait till we talk about the community unique and lore. It's gonna be fun.
All gonna be just Rat City questions.
What is Rat City? Yeah?
Rat City Radio.
So I want to like kind of front load our variety topics, because I want to leave as much conversation time at the end of this stream to talk about dungeons as possible. Because I know that we all have a lot to say about it, but I want to get these other things out of the way first. So speaking of community testing, I think one of the community testers, or one of the things that the testers will be testing soon, is multiplayer. Can we talk about this?
To some extent, and only what's public, of course, but yeah, to whatever they've talked about, we can definitely talk about it.
So recently there's an interview that Zizrin conducted along with Sans and Mike from the EHG team. And during this little interview, they confirmed that 2022, this year, we're going to be getting multiplayer for Last Epoch. Which is like, whoo, hallelujah. I love it.
Yeah, I believe Stan said that, and I was kind of surprised because in the past, they've made that confirmatory statement, of course, missed it. So I figured there's no way they're going to make that statement. So I'm hoping that is sort of proof of how close they think they are. And so they're very confident that they're going to make it.
Can't wait for it. So I guess I'm going to dig just a little bit. Like, are you allowed to say anything about this, Mcfluffin? Like, what can you give us like a little tidbit?
I can just kind of parrot what Stans and EHG say that CTs are going to be getting it first, so we'll get to test it. I mean, I believe if I remember correctly, Stan said in there that he plans on talking about after we did it and giving a post-mortem to the community so that you all know how it went. And I think it's a great idea. A, to keep everyone informed, but B, then I can actually talk about that stuff too. And so it's good for the CTs to not have to feel like they're tight-lipped about it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, Dredd, I want your hot take then. Is multiplayer going to be balanced? Balanced?
No, not at all. No, like if we're just to take the current game and put it in, no. Oh my god.
It's not balanced for single player. Multiplayer is only going to make it worse.
Sometimes your build, has 300,000 ward and 8 million damage after 2 days of playing it and just annihilates the whole game. And sometimes your build, is barely playing in power mounts. So one of the questions we've had in the past is like, okay, so what we know from the developers so far for preparing multiplayer is they've done a lot of work on like the technical aspects of it. They want the servers to run. They want all the UI to work properly. Like they want the game to function without, crashing, without like there's all the server and performance issues in multiplayer.
They're already
But
one step ahead of Wilson.
But that means that they're not working on balance stuff. So like when multiplayer comes out, there's going to be some absolutely absurd things happening with regards to like wonky combinations of builds, team compositions, people getting to like 2,000 waves in the arena legitimately. Like there's going to be some crazy stuff happening.
Yeah, I agree. There's like poison is a huge topic in terms of multiplayer because like poison works with your allies. So it's like, well, doesn't that mean you can push poison to the moon?
Yeah.
How quickly can we kill these enemies?
There's gonna have to be a huge balance pass. I mean, we need it for single player now. Like we need a huge balance pass just to get things remotely close. Yeah, the more they've added, the worse it's gotten, which is not unexpected, but definitely brings in that
I'd rather
need.
them balance later when
Yeah,
multiplayer's actually here.
I think that's the plan. I think in the past they've said something along those lines that get multiplayer going before we do a big balance pass because we're gonna have to do it anyway. Multiplayer's gonna create all these new imbalances, so might as well do it all at once. And yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're watching or if you're listening on Spotify, Last Epoch Game, the developer here that was streaming before us, he said, "We have plans for poison." Evil laughter.
They're just gonna take off the debuff of it. It's gonna be like the next bleed. Same as ignite, same as bleed, same as damage.
Just make it all the same. Yeah,
yep.
Just cap it to 5 damage. There you go. We're good.
Cap it. So, it actually reminds me of something that I've experienced playing Slormancer. So I've been dipping my toes into other action RPGs, just kind of poking around, seeing what else is out there, having some variety days on my own stream. And in Slormancer, the thing that came to mind for me was there are some absolutely busted things that you can do in this game. Even at this point, like there's been like some buffs and nerf cycles that have gone on. You can no longer crash the game by dealing so much damage or having so many projectiles on screen. But in that game, like it's a single player game and there's no economy there. You're never going to blow up the economy because you can farm this one boss in 1 second and flood the market with a bunch of like those top tier uniques. It's never going to happen because it's single player. But on the other hand, when you have a game like Path of Exile, when you have a game like Last Epoch, that economic pressure is like, you can't just have one build that's allowed to blow up this boss because it's going to ruin the market. So like, what is the market going to look like? One of the things that the devs said during this past developer stream is that if you're looking for a game that is a market simulator, Last Epoch is probably not going to deliver on that experience. It's not going to be something where you can just like play the stock market, buy all of this item, buy those things, make a bunch of profit. It's going to have some other kind of trading to it. But I don't know, it's still going to have that multiplayer experience. It's still going to have people blowing up bosses in 1 second and, being unkillable, doing the hardest content, flooding the market. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of curious about that. I wonder what that market is going to look like if it's not just Path of Exile, which is the only thing I'm experienced with.
If you don't know what he's referencing, chat, there's recently been a clip that has been shared to the Reddit thanks to our very own. He's talking about a clip that Mike had where he talked about how they don't want Last Epoch to just be like some kind of market simulator and stuff like that. Pretty much what he described.
So we'll see how that turns out. But I don't know, playing Slormancer and just like having incredibly busted builds, and those are allowed to exist. Like, you're a player, you're playing a video game, go have fun, go break the game. But you just can't have that kind of thing when multiplayer finally comes out this year.
I think it's all just a comparative thing, because like in PoE, the same thing's the same. It's like you have busted things, but like then like the thing is though, the problem comes when the busted things like are able to do things that the non-busted stuff aren't. Like for instance, like like any build in PoE, like if you play correctly and actually build into damage and stuff, can like do Maven. Like any build can do Cirrus and all that. So as long as the other builds are able to do the other content, and it's not just like only one build can do this stuff, it'll be fine. And in Last Epoch, we have a very good balance around that currently. Because like right now, as it stands, as long as you're savvy enough and you know what you're doing and you're stubborn enough, like our very own Mcfluffin here, you can make any build work for T4 Drilla, including Warpath. So it's like, it's not like as if, like only like one build to rule them all, at least currently, anyways. Because like some builds that are good at T4 Drilla are absolutely god awful at the where is it? The Soulfire Bastion, and some builds that are good at the Soulfire Bastion are absolutely god awful at the Arbor. And I think that's where it should be, where some like you want to take, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, you want to use a build for something else instead of just using it for everything. And I'm sure that's what they'll balance around.
So with that said, I think I'm going to use that as a segue into hopefully the meatiest portion of the podcast here. So last week, if you weren't here, we were discussing a video that Mcfluffin you put out on YouTube, and you were talking about some of the fundamental issues that you've seen with Dungeon. I want to talk about this. I want to bring you on in order to talk about like the pros and cons of what Dungeon is. Maybe if things have changed, whether Dread and I agree or disagree with you, and just kind of chat about what dungeons are so far. So I guess first things first, have you received any like pushback from like YouTube comments or people on your own stream about what you've said for Dungeon so far?
I have really only on one topic almost exclusively, and it's not the one I expected. There's a lot of people, well, I don't know if there's a lot. There's a number of people who are very vocal about the idea that they don't want dungeons to be a part of the monolith in any way, shape, or form. And I was pretty surprised about that because I feel like the way that they're currently separated is about the least interesting way that they handle it, personally. So I thought that was almost a slam dunk take. But it turns out that at least for some people, it's not, and they like that they're very separate.
Interesting. Okay. People, I'm actually kind of surprised about that too. I feel like maybe you could have pushed back on something else, but I don't know. I think that the idea of putting like a mini dungeon experience into the Monolith of Fate would be fine as well. I wouldn't mind that at all.
I expected more pushback to be around the balance of the dungeons and the bosses, which is why I spent so much time being meticulous about showing exactly what I was talking about and being very clear on specific things. Maybe that's why I didn't get much pushback. But it was pretty much exclusively people that did not want the keys to go away, and they didn't want them to be a part of the Echo or a part of the web. The web especially, but I also agree with that. I think the web would be not as ideal as putting them in the Echoes themselves. So I can understand that. But one of the biggest concerns people had was that if they get their LP whatever item and they have their Exalted and they don't have the Temporal Sanctum available to them, there's no key there, then they have to wait, which I don't know, to me it doesn't seem like that big of an issue. Like, okay, I'll just go find an Echo. But that was one of the bigger things that people did not like.
Just go farm for a bit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be all that hard, and if you don't have keys you also have the problem. But that was something people they wanted to be able to go into the the Temporal Sanctum whenever they had the item they wanted and not have to wait for it.
Interesting. Dread, give me your thoughts on that. The accessibility of the dungeon, like how quickly you can do it if you don't have a key.
The biggest problem with putting them into the monoliths that I see, like, taking them out of the campaign map and putting them in the monolith, like you said, is the fact that I'm pretty sure when multiplayer comes, there are going to be builds that their specific purpose is going to be to farm one of these dungeons specifically, like each one, right? Like, for instance, you'll have a build that completely invalidates the Soulfire Bastion boss by killing him in 5 seconds, or however many seconds you need to before you die. There's going to be a build that does the Temporal Sanctum really fast because it can move through the mobs with like phasing or whatever. And there's going to be a build that just completely invalidates the Arbor boss because they just have regen instead of leech. And there's going to be builds like that have viability because of the dungeon environment. And if you take away that consistent like source of the dungeon, right? Like, for instance, if you make it so they're in the monoliths, then those builds aren't necessarily a thing anymore, because then you just want to play generic builds that can do the dungeons. And I think that would be a bad thing for the game, because one of the best things I like about Path of Exile currently is, especially with the new Atlas system, is the fact that I can target specific pieces of content if I want to. Like, if I want to go do simulacrums, I'll make a simulacrum build and go play simulacrum. If I want to go do lab, I'll go do a lab build, right? Like, I can choose what content I do, and that would significantly hamper the ability of being able to. Now, you would still be able to, but it would add a lot of like clunkiness to that kind of like, what do you call it, like strategy. Like, for instance, I have, like, you could play a different build where all you do is just farm monoliths all day, and then you have like a full inventory of Temporal Sanctum keys. You hop onto your Temporal Sanctum farmer and you farm that all day. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for the game, because I think that being able to farm different kinds of content would be healthy for the game overall. And having a break from the monoliths is definitely something that should be in the game. And the dungeons actually kind of, like, whenever I find a legendary item that I want to slam, I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go do the dungeon again. Then I go hop on the dungeon character and I go do dungeon. And I like that feeling. I don't know about you guys, I like that feeling. But I do agree that the monoliths could benefit from like that kind of system. And what I think they could fix that with is just make the keys rarer, so that, like, for instance, in the monolith, right, when you find a key, instead of having it to be a random, like an arena key or something like that, make it a specific key. Like, oh, this echo drops a soulfire key or a bunch of soulfire keys, so that when you go do a monolith, like you want to do the monolith and you find a bunch of keys, like, bam, I can go do Soulfire Bastion like 5 different times.
Are you saying that like, as an echo reward, currently we have like the arena key of memory and the arena key? You're saying like make that reward like toward some of the other dungeons?
Yeah, other keys. Well, I think they could make them rarer, and they could make it so it drops a bunch of keys at once, so that, like, for instance, hey, there's a bunch of Soulfire Bastion keys. Let me go pop that open, and you do that, and now you have like 6 Soulfire Bastion keys, and then you go do it for like an hour or 2. And that would replicate the kind of feeling I think you're kind of wanting to like emulate, i.e. like the feeling of like having the dungeons be kind of tied to the monolith, as then you have to do monoliths to go get the keys, and then the keys will let you go to the dungeon. And since you're doing like 6 dungeons in a row, you don't feel like as though you're going back and forth. You're just doing the dungeon a few times and then going back to monoliths.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think what they did with the right-clicking thing on the key was the perfect way of fixing the, like, I have a bunch of keys problem. And like, I really like that system where you just right click and you're like, bam, you're at the campaign map. But I do agree that like the monolith could use some kind of dungeon system, and maybe instead of like taking these dungeons and putting them into the monolith, they could just make a dungeon that specifically is only found in the monolith per se. And that would be like a rare echo type, and that would be a different dungeon all of itself.
If you want more like variety. So I guess, but before I propose this, I need to remind myself and you all, and then like, anyone who's listening too, whenever we're sitting here talking about like, what if the devs did this, I just need to remind myself, it's always easier to highlight a problem to find out that like, I don't like this feels bad, when those kinds of things. It's very easy to find out when I as a player don't like something. And it's really hard to propose the appropriate solution to it. So it's fun to sit here and shoot the breeze about like, why don't they do this and this and this? But it really is difficult to find out exactly what the right solution should be for a complex problem like this. That said, oh boy, I got an idea. Okay, so idea number 1, janitor. You have a new monster subtype. And whenever you kill him, he drops a whole bunch of keys.
It's like Risk of Rain 2, you know, the mob that, like, just the mob that like drops a bunch of items, whatever his name
just
is,
make
the
a janitor.
scavenger.
All the profane fleshes drop like 10 keys. All right, so maybe if we move past that.
I didn't get to say anything on it.
You like my janitor idea?
For 10 minutes and we're moving on already.
Tell me how much you like my janitor idea. Go ahead.
Dungeon Warden, that's great.
Dungeon Warden, yeah, Dungeon Warden is an interesting idea. That would be better than where we're at now. And I think that has a more of an effect on one of my major issues than putting him in the at the Echo rewards, because I think that actually exacerbates the issue, which is that there's nothing inside the Echo to actually discover and explore. If it's just the reward, then you're still going to run as fast as you can through it. There's a lot to unpack in what Dredd said there. So as far as the builds go, I do think that having builds that are more efficient at certain content is good. A build that is so hyper efficient that it doesn't even want to run the echoes to do the dungeon, I feel like is probably too far. I think that, and I don't even, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't even think like PoE builds tend to be quite that hyper efficient. Like they still do the mapping. There might be a few, but that's mainly a pretty rare thing.
Mainly like lab farmers, that's where that happens.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Maybe there's a couple, but I think the vast majority of the time you want builds to be relatively balanced around most of the content. They can do most of the content pretty well. So I don't know that I think that the keys justify like hyper specific builds to like just fight Jolra or just fight Crimoris. I don't know that that's necessarily either what EHG is looking to get out of those either. Yeah. So, but I also do agree with Dredd that there should be some way for those builds to access the content maybe a little bit easier, since that's what they're good at. Maybe one option would be something like dungeons still show up in echoes, but there's a way to turn those into a key on a character instead of running it. Like maybe some other material that you get, and then you convert it into a key, and then you can run it on another one. So that way they still show up as content that you discover, not just like randomly drops or just drops off the boss. And so it helps with that exploratory sense, but then also, helps with Dreads. We have builds that are really good at certain content. We want to run it.
Would there be any merit in having like the tier 1 dungeon be free for keys, and then like higher level dungeons you'd have to pay a key for?
I think they could make it so T4 is that way and make all the other tiers before that. But then
like
they would have to kill the rewards.
Yeah,
they'd have to kill the rewards, which is the biggest problem, because then you just go farm T3 dungeon all day.
Is that bad?
Yeah, in this case, because there's no like buy-in.
Yeah.
Right. Like imagine if you could do lab without having to use, lab keys, so it would completely kill the market, right?
Imagine doing lab in Path of Exile without having to put in a key. First of all, in Trade League, it's complete non-issue, because you can just buy as many keys as you want. And we're about to move toward a Trade League where very likely in Last Epoch you'll be able to trade keys, right?
Well, they could very easily make it so that you can't trade keys.
I guess. I wonder how much they want to limit access to the dungeons, though. Like, aren't the dungeons supposed to be like the cool new thing, like the latest piece of endgame? Like, they want you to engage with those.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I was like with the Monolith thing. Now, what we could do, and this satiates Mcfluffin's idea as well, is in the monoliths, right? There could be shrines, like let's say it's like a Soulfire Bastion shrine or something like that. And if you complete the little thing in it, right, like you kill the stuff mobs around it, it gives you a free entrance into the Soulfire Bastion, like then and there now, like in the monolith itself. just gives you the ability, and then if you die, you get pooped out of it, or pooped out of the echo, or of course, you know, or you die because it's hardcore, right? Like parry.
Mhm.
But so the idea is you like search through the monolith, and that would reward a little bit more exploration because you'll find these random shrines randomly. Like, hey, here's a free T4. Here's the free temporal dungeon like ticket. Go do it real quick. And it's like, can my build handle that? You know what? Let's try. And that would make it a little bit more fun to explore the monoliths themselves because you could find these shrines for free. Now the problem is, keys are really easy to get right now, so that wouldn't be as good, but that's like a good start.
Yeah, you gotta have enough scarcity to make it worthwhile. Like if I've got a stash of Temporal Sanctum keys, I don't care about that at all. So that's the problem, is finding a balance to where
Or
you can
make
have
it
the
so it has a
discoverability.
special modifier on the door. You know how like the doors have special modifiers?
Yeah.
Make it so it's a temporal sanctum that where all specifically more enemies drop this. So it's like just an extra mod on top of the door already. Like for instance, like the Soul Gambler has extra pairs of boots. Then it'll have another mod on top of that to start with. The Soul Gambler has extra, and that's the shrine mod, right?
If it affects the ultimate reward, then I'm on board with you.
Yeah.
If it's just like,
it
drops more exalted rings, like we've got that, and I think it's kind of silly. But if it's like, okay, now this particular gambler, he's gonna have like already he's gonna have like a tier 5 sealed effects from the get go. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Well, he said he likes the idea. I'd like my job application, please. Thank you very much.
Let's use that as another segue here, talking about the monsters in the dungeon themselves affecting what the outcome is going to be as soon as you kill the boss. So the poster child for this currently is with the Soulfire Bastion, the third of the 3 dungeons introduced. As you kill monsters, you gather like soul currency, and as soon as you kill the boss, you get to use your soul currency to gamble, which incentivizes you to maybe not full clear, but kill as many monsters as possible while you're running through the Soulfire Bastion. Those first 2 dungeons, both the Temporal Sanctum and the Lightless Arbor, don't have anything like that. I want to talk about, like, should that be the case? Should all of these dungeons have the same effect, where like you gather something up by killing monsters, then you use it later on? Like maybe you can get only gold, and like the gold you kill in Lightless Arbor can be used for gambling at the end. Or it's modifier. Special gold that's worth 10 times as much or something. Like, should they all have the same flavor? Or
I vote to call it Leprechaun Gold.
Great.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about the consequence of not having that, which is you just run straight through. Like you have no reason to stop whatsoever. And so whether or not the fix is definitively make it affect the end, which I think is what it should be, there needs to be something in the dungeon that makes you not run straight through. Other mechanics in it, maybe like some sort of cool chests that have special, drops, or something that is exploratory in the dungeon. I use that word a lot because that's what the problem is. The problem is you don't want to explore. Like you don't want to do anything but run.
They do have a system where you don't run straight through. You know what it is?
Roblox?
Just make the mobs kill you. What? Like the Soulfire Bastion, where you don't give them any heed, they just kill you instead.
Yeah, but that's also like
damage.
It's really it's super tedious to run.
No. I agree. That's just that's the idea right now. Like for instance, the Arbor dungeon and the Soulfire Bastion. The reason why you don't just run through it is because they're gonna kill you.
Oh, the Arbor's not scary. The Arbor enemies aren't scary. But you're right. The Bastion. I haven't
done much T4 Arbor, but with like for instance Temporal Sanctum, you don't really kind of want to go too fast because like enemies drop exalted rings. Sure, I'll spend a few extra minutes here.
In the Temporal Sanctum, there's also really good pack size.
Yeah,
there are some dense corridors with monsters there. Like that's fun. Like shifting into a pack of huge monsters and having them all spawn up and having that like, oh crap moment, to me, like I was like, yes, finally.
You know what they also don't have though? Mint green golems that one shot you off screen. That's what they don't have.
Yeah, I kind of like Temporal Sanctum. Yeah, I don't know about that Soulfire Bastion life. I only farmed tier 1 Soulfire Bastion so that I can get my Ashes of Mortality ring. That's all I know.
One thing to note that I've noticed with the dungeon so far, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I've been playing a lot of builds and I've been pushing them to like, 300, 400 corruption, the monolith. Doing that, and then going into T4 Jurla and like going from the difficult mobs with modifiers to like just the mobs that just fall over if you breathe on them, that is a culture shock. Like that right there. It's just like, oh wow, these things just fall over. I'm like, I could just walk through all this. And I think T4 dungeon shouldn't like, it should be a little bit more dangerous than that. Now, I say that and they're like, oh, let's just add diamond matrons into it. There you go. I'm like, please no.
So one thing that you just pointed out is like the modifiers on your maps, they last for a long time when you're doing 400 corruption. So they pile up and they become more and more difficult. When you're doing dungeons, you have 2 floors. So like you have like not in the first floor has modifiers on it. But like then the second floor will, and then the boss will have some. What if we had smaller floors, but 4 of them instead of 2? Is that like, do we want more stacking modifiers and choose your own adventure?
With that, in that regards, I know that this is gonna be funny when I say this, but I think they should take a page out of PoE's book where just add a skill tree to each of the dungeons where you can like click on modifiers and be like, oh, you want to make the mobs in the mobs in the dungeon drop significantly more loot, but they like then like diamond matrons spawn and stuff like that. That would be great. That was a system like that. Obviously, it doesn't have to be insanely complicated. It could just be like 5 things, or you can like choose or whatever. Something of that ilk where it's not just run the dungeon, you're done. It's more like run the dungeon with the modifier you want on that whatever day or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the favor system. Yeah, we found out that's a meta progression system. Hey, yeah, it could be.
We don't know.
It could be.
We don't have any idea what the favor system is.
Here. Oh boy, time.
All we know is what the interview said. It's a meta progression system that's not tied to XP. So and yeah, and I'm always a fan for skill trees. So if you recommend a skill tree for about anything, I'm going to say yes.
Interesting. Okay. I was kind of imagining the favor system would be like similar to capturing their souls in divine vessels from like Path of Exile. Like you have like Lagan's favor so that something else happens more often.
You know what's funny? Back when you were playing Perry, the Pantheon system was garbage, right? But then like recently with like Expedition and all that, they completely revamped the like Pantheon system to the point where it's actually usable and actually really cool, because like there's like freeze immunity in there. Like there's a reason to do your Pantheons now. And I was about to be like, oh, but Pantheons suck. I'm like, oh wait, no, now they don't. I'm like,
Interesting. So we were talking about having the monsters that you kill in the dungeon affect the loot that you get afterward. Is that an idea that would translate well into the Monolith of Fate? Like the monsters that you kill affecting how much exalted helmets drop from the exalted helmet node? Is that the kind of thing that would benefit?
So go ahead.
I just want to differentiate, that's like this one thing that could be like nice for killing monsters, but it doesn't necessarily solve the lack of exploration. So these are like 2 kind of separate things. I just want to make that clear to like, to chat and whatnot, that wouldn't like fix exploration. Like you might go and kill a few more monsters, but you're not going to find anything exciting. But it could give you more reason to go and kill more monsters than you want to now.
Yeah, that shrine idea would be cool for that specifically. Stuff like that, where there's like, like you talked about Path of Exile, or someone did recently. I think it was someone where like, me. Path of Exile, it's fine because like there's like these 20 different league mechanics in the map. Obviously, we don't need that much, but the chance at something rare happening, like the aforementioned like Soulfire Bastion shrine or something like that, just shrines in general and stuff like that would be cool. Like for instance, they could have shrines where you have to like do like a mini boss or something like that, where like it's actually kind of difficult, kind of like like an elite in Solarmancer, kind of like that, where it's like actually difficult. It's like a normal mob. Like for instance, you take like, or like in Gunfire, like the elite enemies in Gunfire work, where like there's like normal mobs and there's the elite version of it, which is like a bigger version with more health and all that, and it does something specific based on what it was beforehand. And make it so that when you kill that guy and you do it, it should be hard, right? When you do it, so that you like add the dungeon chest drops like a few extra exalted helmets or something like that. Something along those lines. It doesn't matter what it is. And like that key idea could be a thing. And then we could, of course, get the dungeon warden, which I parrot the idea of having the dungeon warden from Minecraft, but slapping Mike's face on it. That would be wonderful. I would love that as a mob.
Yeah, I 100% am in favor of Minecraft Mike as the dungeon warden.
Yeah, right here, that picture right there.
So, do I even want to click on this during the podcast?
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
What? So, what I'm hearing is like more exploration, reasons to be non-linear. Like we talked about it in Dungeon, talked about it in like Monolith of Fate. Are there reasons to do that also in like in the storyline of Last Epoch itself? Like, is that an okay place to be linear, going from point A to point B?
It depends on your opinion on how you feel about the campaign in general. Like, are you the kind of person that I hate the campaign, I want to get through it as fast as possible, or I take my time in the campaign and I have fun and it takes me like 10 hours to do it? You know, it really depends on that. And I think it could easily go both ways.
This is an area where, like, again, I think Pee-wee does it fairly well, where a lot of those mechanics show up in the campaign. In fact, you get introduced to them in the campaign, but you don't have to do them. Like, you can just skip them. If you're someone who wants to speed run to mapping, you can absolutely do that and not feel bad about it. But if you like to have something, to break it up, it's there for you.
That kind of makes me feel like the tier 1 dungeon should be not gated by keys. I don't think it's that big a deal if a character just like does that as their character progression on their first playthrough.
Yeah, I think they should make it so it's just difficult, right? Like where it's like
I would not do it in hardcore. To be fair,
well, yeah.
I would not do this in hardcore.
Well, I mean, the idea is like, oh, you think your character's strong? Oh, yeah, here's a piece of candy. You can skip this amount of campaign and get to the end quicker, but you're gonna have to not die to the Lightless Arbor boss first, and I would be fine with that. That's like where I think they could make tier 1 not require a key, or have it already unlocked and not require a key, but then kill the rewards like they've done already.
Just make the rewards much smaller altogether. Sure.
Yeah, and like make the worst unique be the T1 drop, which they pretty much already have. Somnia.
This is an area where actually I understand EHG why they're doing it the way they are, because what they're worried about is that new players are going to just go into the dungeon, not realize what they're doing, finish the dungeon, and then end up somewhere else in the campaign, and they've completely missed part of the campaign, and they don't know what's going on. What I think they should do is, as soon as you get past the point of the dungeon being like, on the first playthrough, the dungeon, you've passed where you would have come out, have some quest end there that gives you a key, so you can go back if you want to, and then you can always do it.
Totally
a side quest, side quest as a reward. That's just the reward.
And then there's no way you can like accidentally skip it that way.
That would be amazing. Like a side quest, because we're lacking side quests right now, right?
Yep.
So it's like
it's a pretty good reward too, no matter what, because on a new character you're going to want to open up the dungeon anyway. You're going to need the key. You might as well just go get it anyway. There's one key down.
All 4 of them anyways, and then it keeps it so that it makes it so that the dungeons still keep their kind of luster. I really like the idea of the dungeons being this kind of thing, and as an extra piece of content where you can use it to super juice your characters quicker and all that. And I like that. Now, obviously, the campaign isn't set up for it yet because of how passives and all that work currently. But when the campaign gets the rest of the acts and it's finished, skipping through the Lightless Arbor part is not going to feel as bad, because then you just do the rest of the campaign, you get all the passives and stuff. Right now, it feels bad because that's not the case. Like if you use all the dungeon skips or whatever, right? You're gonna have no extra passives, no idle slots, mainly the idle slots. But at the same time, it's like we only get 15 passives. It's really possible for like a character to be able to do the base monoliths, like the 58 ones, without their idols and without their. Obviously, this would be a strong build, but it's entirely possible, because like, what idols are you gonna have then anyways?
15 right? Cold res and 10 flat life.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if
I know they've said they want it to be the case to where as they add more dungeons, when you skip one, it's kind of basically negate the other one. So you have to be part of the campaign. It's like the campaigns overlap a little bit.
okay.
Yeah, it turns off the thing until you finish the campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, effectively, kind of, basically, because you just went past it. You're like you have to go all the way back, which means you have to do like
I like
other
that,
maps
where they make it. Yeah, they
So
don't
if they
just unlock it, because that would
if
be
they get that
terrible.
right, then you'll probably by nature just pick up passive points no matter what route you take, and then
Just make
we're
it
good.
not efficient to do them all. Make it efficient that you can do like one or two of them at most.
Yeah, just a few, just enough to where like no matter what, you're always going to get your passives and your idols.
I suddenly in my head I'm playing Shoots and Ladders, and it's great, cool.
Shoots and Ladders is great. It's a fun game.
Why is that coming to mind?
So that's actually pretty apt, yeah.
Except we don't have the dice rolls. Well, maybe you do.
I'm sure we can incorporate gambling if you still want.
Did the cold wave crit me or not? That's a dice roll.
So if we're talking about like dungeon at the beginning, maybe you can just like walk into it and like lower rewards, but it doesn't require a key. Or you get a key from doing a quest, you can go back. So we're talking about like alternative ways to get keys. The Lightless Arbor has a pretty good possibility of giving you infinite keys. You find one key, you go in there once, you get 8 more, and each one more key gives you 1 or 2 more keys.
Which are entirely useless unless if you're farming for the uniques.
True. What about, like, should the dungeons be, like, self-sustaining? So in Path of Exile, just real quick, if we're talking about, like, the Labyrinth of Fate from Path of Exile, you have a pretty good chance of, when you open one of the treasure chests at the end from a gold key that you got from farming in the middle of the lab, one of those treasure chests could have a bunch of offerings to the goddess. And you could go run 10 more after this, or 10 more labs. Should that be a mechanic that is incorporated in these dungeons as well? Where like as soon as you get one key, you're relatively sure that you can run it 5 or 6 times?
What they could do is they could do it like lab, like we were talking about, where they just add a modifier to like a shrine inside the dungeon or something like that. Or just like the dungeon boss has like 50% increased attack speed, but then when he dies, he drops a key and stuff like that. That'd be great. And like, the T4 dungeon boss allows you to gives you a bunch of extra soulfire essence or whatever on death, or for the bastion, your first modifier you buy is free, but the Lightless Arbor is an asshole like he is already. Or like T4 dungeon, it's like I don't know what they could do for T4 dungeon, or make it so that T4 Durla drops another unique that is based on the unique that she drops. Like, how like she drops not a unique, but like an exalted. She drops like another pair of LP unique, like a random LP unique, and then have a random exalted item that would work with that LP unique, so that she dropped 2 of those shared pairs instead of just one. Not her unique, but like a random one, right? That she could drop. And stuff like that. And make it so that one of them is just the dungeon key, just drops an extra dungeon key. That'd be great.
Mcfluffin, same question for you then. What about self-sustaining dungeons?
So I always worry about content that becomes self-sustaining when it's like limited in diversity, like the dungeons are, like running one of those dungeons, any one of them. They're pretty limited in what you do there. It's consistently the same content, and what happens is, if they happen to be the most efficient method of getting anything and you want to get it, you are stuck there until you get what you want. If it's something that's like constant, like say gold, then that content becomes the primary content that you play. And when that happens, the diversity of the game just like tanks, absolutely tanks.
That's why you make it leprechaun gold that you can't take outside of the dungeon. It just goes away.
Well, but that's not how it's set up right now, right? Like all the systems affect you in all the other ways. And so that would be my biggest worry about, like, Lightless Arbor is probably one of the safest ones, because you have to get gold to run it and to do anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
But to some extent, I guess, actually Temporal Sanctum and Lightless Arbor could still be that, because they give you the free modifiers on the, like the tier 4 drops exalted, whatever. Or they all, have the increased exalted anything. If that day is like really, really good exalteds, you might be there all day. And
maybe that's a good thing though. Sometimes maybe
that's not a good thing. I don't want to be running any of those dungeons. I've already done that. We did that. I did that for the uniques. I hated it. That's why I made that freaking video.
I think that's where the
that's
video came from.
understandable.
That you just didn't want to
But
run
isn't
it
that
anymore.
more of a problem of the dungeons not being fun to farm than the problem of having a reason to farm them that day?
It's both. I mean, even if it's fun content, if it's this like the reason why we want like all these different systems is so that we don't get stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we can we can change it up. So when that system becomes self-sustaining and doesn't give you a reason to go and do anything else, you might want to do it, but you'll feel bad about it because you're doing something less efficient. And so I think the easiest thing is just to make sure that they all interact, interplay with each other, so that you're always incentivized to do different content to help out the other content.
Mcfluffin, it sounds like what you're saying is you want to funnel people back into the Monolith of Fate as often as possible. Or
whatever. I want to funnel people into lots of content, right? I want whatever it is that EHG makes at any given time, whatever the end game looks like. I want there to be reasons to do all of it and to do it, the variety throughout your gameplay constantly. So you just never feel like you're stuck in any one type of content. And the more diverse the content is, the longer you can spend there, which is why I think the Monolith of Fate is generally a really good main end game system, because there's a lot to do there. It's not just like a dungeon to where you're literally doing the same thing over and over again. But even the Monolith, like there's a reason why we wanted other end game systems, because you don't want to spend all your time doing one thing. You want to feel like you can continuously move around and and still progress and still feel good about it, feel rewarded.
Yeah, and I still feel like I agree with that, but at the same time, I come from a game like Path of Exile where you can do one kind of end game, but the thing is, it's not easy to do that, right? There's a buy-in. You have to buy a bunch of simulacrum keys to do it first. You have to farm up currency to get to that point, but then once you get to that point and you're finally doing it, you can easily become self-sustaining if you do it right? Like if you get enough rewards, you can just go buy more simulacrum keys and keep doing it. And same thing with lab and all that. And maybe that could be the way they go in the future. Like if they just make keys rare enough to the point where if I want to keep farming the same dungeon over and over again, I have to go out of my way to go buy those keys, so that if I want to limit myself to one end game system, I can go do that, but I don't. You're not able to just walk into it, as a new player, right?
I want to touch on one more specific topic before I kind of open it up. What about for somebody who has no keys whatsoever? What does that person do? Or maybe even what should that person have to do in order to start farming these dungeons?
Currently right now, kill as many Monolith bosses as possible in Orbis. Just keep killing them, That's really the main way. Or you could do, T4 Arena of Champions and have a chance of getting a mod to drop one key after 20 minutes of grind. Okay, I'll shut up about Arena of Champions.
Arena of Champions. All right, Mcfluffin, same question to you then. What do you do as somebody who has no keys whatsoever? You're in empowered monoliths. Your character's level, 75 or so. What do you do?
Yeah, you run monolith bosses. That's clearly the best option right now. It's far and away the most efficient method of getting more keys.
It's pretty deterministic too. Like you just build up stability, you kill the boss, hope you get the right keys. If you don't, you just reset and do it again. Mm-hmm. Should there be a different way of getting keys? Like we did briefly talk about on the Monolith of Fate, there's those key rewards that can give you an arena key of memory, or maybe just a regular arena key. Should those be opened up? Maybe a different system for obtaining these keys?
I mean, you could give Arena Champions some actual point if you did that. It actually have a purpose. So,
this is the portion of the stream where we dunk on Arena of Champions. Dread, do you want to go first?
1 in 9 chance. 1 in 9 chance. You
is that what it is?
You put a key in. You have a 1 in 9 chance to get the unique you want. That's all I have to say.
So there's 3 bosses, and each boss has a 1 in 3 chance of dropping their specific
36% unique. Chance, but it's close enough.
Okay, so it's approximately a 1 in 9 to get the specific unique you want. So did you not get a 1 LP Vion's Chariot on your first try? That wasn't your experience? Oh, that's weird, huh? All right. And then Mcfluffin, what about Arena of Champions? Are you as jaded as Dread is about this?
Yeah, I mean, they added the uniques, so now they have something in them. But before that, I don't understand why they were added. Like, I'm not trying to say they shouldn't have added them. I just, what was the goal?
Do you
They
mean why
said
they added the uniques
specifically
or why they
after
added the bosses? Why they
they,
added what?
they said specifically. Let's just be clear. They said specifically after we talked about this, in the Ask for Devs. I'd have to go dig it up, but they said that they're planning on making more uniques for the Arena of Champions and not just have it one unique per. So instead of having a 36% chance of getting one unique, you have a chance of getting a unique from him, and that would make it feel a lot less bad.
So it's just another like couple of bosses to get uniques off of. Like, we've got that. It's called a monolith. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought Arena of Champions was going to do something different.
I thought it was going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's not like, because if it was difficult, it'd make
It
sense, right?
is on a new character.
Well, yeah, everything's difficult in new character. Not everything. Like, what's his name? The first monolith boss isn't, but Abomination's not. But like, all the tier stuff, get to tier 4. Yeah, it's harder on a new character, but
What?
that stuff is easier than tier 4 dungeons, and it's in the content cycle that is supposed to be competitive. Like, arena is supposed to be where you go to show off just how awesome you are, and then the Arena of Champions is like, well, you can be a lot less awesome and do these instead of the dungeon. I'm like, I don't understand why that. And no offense to Mike, who just did an awesome tier 3 Arena of Champions, like the amazing was really cool. But tier 4 dungeons are just harder than tier 4 Arena of Champions. They just really, really are. And even if they had made those very challenging content without much, reward wise, at least I could be like, okay, that is for let me show how awesome I am. I cleared tier 4 Crimson Blade.
I would rather them make it I would rather them make it so that when you make those choices in the Arena of Champions, you can just choose the obviously bad idea. Like, give the Arena Champion Frenzy and Haste. Give the Arena Champion Enrage at half health. Give the Arena Champion 25% crit avoid. They can make the Arena Champion very, very hard with some very quick modifiers.
You want something other than just 100% health, 100% damage?
Yeah, and they could make those the rewarding mods, and then they could give the baby mod if you're just wanting to do that instead. The Arena of Napians, like Nair just said, you can have the Arena Napians, or you could have the Arena of you're probably gonna die. And I would be okay with that.
It sounds like the reward system for the Arena of Champions isn't matching what you two are looking for. What reward is missing from Last Epoch?
Keys.
You want more keys
from champions specifically, or from Last Epoch in general?
From specifically champions. I think that so Arena of Champions is this interesting piece of content where it's like you get a bunch of arena keys, right? And if you're not doing actual arena, then you're of course wanting to do Arena of Champions. How do I turn these? And they also cost a lot when you sell them, right? Why do they cost a lot when they sell them when the actual content that's associated with it, i.e. Arena of Champions, is not really worth your time? What they could do, and this would fix a lot of our problems that we were just talking about, where instead of making it so that, make it so that keys drop still from the monolith, but make it so it's less, and then make the Arena of Champions be the key thing. Like, it would be the intermediary content. Like, let's imagine you're like day 1 of the league, right? And you're like, okay, I want to go farm Arena of Champions T4 because it's not that hard, and I want to turn all the I want to get farm keys so that I can go farm the dungeons afterwards. And that's how it feels right now. Like, it's supposed to be that. Now, is it that right now? No. But the problem is like, as people are saying in chat, the biggest difficulty of Arena of Champions right now is the fact that you have to be sober during the whole time. You have to be awake. And what Perry and I talked about recently, we talked about the arena system in Arena specifically, where the waves keep coming even if you don't kill everything. And the Arena of Champions don't have that for some reason. And like, why not? Make it so that, and like, I would wish that it was much faster, or there was like in what is it called, Vampire Survivors. It's very popular, right? They have a hyper mode where everything's faster. Give us hyper Arena of Champions where things just come in droves. Make the reward a little bit better for that specifically, but then like make it so like, it's like a fight to the death. Make it really hard. Like I want Arena of Champions to be like the hardest content in the game, like just for fun. Like Earth Arena, yeah. Just make it like the hilarious, like not hilarious, but like make it so that like when I'm doing it on stream, it's like a spectacle to be had. Like I want a wave where like 4 diamond matrons like pop up, and I'm like, oh shit, and then I die because of that. I want blood sport. I want to like appease the masses, Oh, obviously not that crazy, but you get what I mean. Like I want to be excited when I do it. And right now, I fall asleep instead. So it's like,
I've got 2 things on
ahead.
Dread's points. The last 10 waves in Arena of Champions are the best. They should all be like that.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Dread is saying. It should always be like that, to where they're just like, they're coming out. There's never any time where you don't have enemies. Here's a solution that works with the monoliths that we're talking about, with keys and dungeons, and with Dreads. What if the Arena of Champions drops a key of conversion? There is a chance to get a key of conversion as a reward. And if you have a key of conversion and you find a dungeon in an echo, you can then use the key of conversion to turn that into a dungeon key, which you can then use in any character.
Or it could just be like the all key, or like you just put it in and it works for any of them. Just use it as the all key, like it's like,
but then it's outside of the monolith again. Now you just like skip the monolith. The whole point is that you're not skipping the monolith.
No, that works.
You're exploring stuff in the monolith.
I mean, to be fair, the Arena of Champions is so far out of the way of the monolith.
Exactly. So we're trying to tie stuff in. So we have like this key that you then have to use once you find something in the monolith, on that thing in the inside an echo, and then you get to have your special dungeon key that you can run on any character. So you still have to use the monolith, but now you also have to use the arena. So now both content are important to use. And now we actually have value in both.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was just teasing, but it's like right now, obviously, from everything we've said and everything we're seeing from Twitch chat too, which you guys can see if you're watching from YouTube now. Thank God. Thank you, Perry, by the way, for doing that wonderful work on that. Arena of Champions is not what we envisioned. When we were told about it, like the forum post, we thought we were going to get our asses kicked, and that was not the case. And it's, I want Arena of Champions to be like wave 400 kind of difficulty. Like I want it to be difficult. I want it, and of course make the rewards, situational for that. And I agree with Mcfluffin that there could be tie-ins to the Monolith of Fate as well, where you could tie it in that regard. Like there's so I have actually been playing D2, and I know Lonestar has been playing D2 as well. And one thing that I would really like is maybe give us a way where like the Arena of Champions, it gives us pieces of uniques. You know how like you have rune words and you have like pieces of like a thing, like passion, enigma, those things, right? Where you have rune words where you do like the 3 rune words on the chest and it turns into enigma. Well, what you could do is you could have the Arena of Champions be the finishing piece of the puzzle, like when he drops the finishing piece of the puzzle, but you can find those puzzle pieces in the Monolith of Fate, like you said, and the Arena echoes in the Monolith of Fate, and have the Arena echoes feel like the Arena Champion echoes, where like, and you could fight a mini boss that's not the big boss at the end of the Arena Champions. It could be like a themed boss, like a peon, right? Like kind of like a PoE where you have like the endless hunger, and then the world guy, except don't add the endless hunger, please don't. But yeah, like, and when he drops that piece, it's like, to finish this piece, it's a 2-piece. You have to go to the Arena of Champions to get the other piece, like the Big Daddy piece. And you combine 2 pieces, and bam, you get a Van Chariot.
What I'm hearing from these explanations is more of like a coherent, tied together system. So right now, if you want to like do the Temporal Sanctum to make like a legendary item, you want to farm up your blessings to get like, unique amulets and unique items to drop and amulets to drop. And then you go to the corresponding place to farm up amulets, and you hope to get one with LP on it. And then ultimately you're going to farm up a key, and then you take it there, and then you do this. And it's like this is this whole system that kind of points together. Or maybe you do high corruption in order to get gold, and then you go to Lightless Arbor in order to spend that gold. Maybe Soulfire Bastion could have more of a tie-in to these other systems as well. But that's what I'm hearing. You want these things to be more coherent and less standalone. Is that a good summation?
For them to matter.
Yeah, okay. Matter. I mean, tying them in guarantees they matter. But I mean, you could do it other ways. But I don't know. I just like the idea that this content will also lead to that content, will also lead to that content, just constantly enticing you to do more, to do different things.
I would love it if you did like an arena echo in the Monolith and you dropped like this weird fragment of Vaon's chariot.
Fragments.
And it like tells you like, hey, if you want the other piece of me to have me, you need to go to the Arena of Champions to like go fight, whatever, and then get the other piece. And that would be that kind of tie-in where it's like, it's not like, I've been watching someone on YouTube. His name is Joff Strife Hayes. And if you know him, yeah, he's a great guy. And one of the things he likes, he's been talking about sandbox MMOs specifically. And he's talking about how like in a sandbox MMO, like an ARPG, it's kind of like if you put some parallels, where you go out into this world, you do whatever you want, like Minecraft, right, or something like that. But he wants suggested paths, not like oh, you should go do this, more like hey, there are some things you could do, and like suggested things, like you could go kill the Ender Dragon, or in this case, with the Arena of Champions thing, like you drop that Vaon's chariot piece, like, hey, you could go try the Arena of Champions if you want, You don't have to. You could just throw this fragment on the ground and never use me ever again. But you could also get something really cool, And it's like the suggestions like that, where it's not like, like putting a gun to your head and forcing you to do it. It's more like a kind of a tease. And that's like what the legendary potential system is like, because you drop an LP legendary, you're a new player. And you're like, how do I use this? What is this? Oh my god. And you do some research and you find out you can turn it into this overpowered legendary item if you just go do a T4 Jurla. And then bam, that's your tie-in. And like the Monolith has that, and that's why the T4 dungeon feels way better in that regard versus the other dungeons. Like for instance, when you drop like a key, you're like, oh, let me just go do that. Instead of like I could do that. And that's like the case, is could.
Interesting. So for the podcast, we are just over an hour at this point. I've worked through my own topics. I've gotten the conversations that I wanted to get out of both of you. Is there anything else on your mind about either like dungeons, the current patch? We talked a little bit about set items as well, and those are being revamped slowly but surely. Maybe even voting on community unique items?
I'd like to talk about that.
Red City Spear.
I'd like to talk about that, yeah.
Let's talk.
I'll let you go first, Mcfluffin.
Let's talk for a moment. Yeah, unique voting on the new community design unique item. Mcfluffin, take it.
Meteor. Mana Strike Meteor. We should all be voting for that.
24% though. It's at 24%.
I know. We should all be voting for that. It's the only one that actually creates a build style that we don't currently have. I don't care about turning my volcanic orb into void volcanic orb.
Wouldn't that just be devouring orb with extra steps?
Well,
I don't understand why that's getting so many votes.
It gives you a buff, and then you gain movement speed. And
well, that thing is it's going to be capped, because if it's not capped, it's going to be stupid overpowered. Which means you're going to go slower, because it also tells you can't use your teleport. It's going to be terrible.
The problem with the volcanic orb unique is it's not something that makes you play volcanic orb differently, other than the movement skill.
You don't use your teleport.
The reason why everyone loves it so much is because volcanic orb is historically a really bad skill, and people want volcanic orb to be good. So anything that has the name on volcanic orb is like, oh, that could make volcanic orb actually playable and fun to use. And that's what they're doing. Like for instance, Meteor with Mana Strike thing, they see a 1 second cooldown. I'm like, ew. I mean, that's how I feel. Ew. I mean, at the same time, like, would you really want to crit Meteor more? But at the same time, my problem with the Mana Strike Meteor thing is just like, is it going to give you a reason to do that instead of just self-casting the Meteor? right? Now, obviously, you don't have to go through the animation.
Absolutely, because you can get all your mana back, and you can crit guaranteed with Mana Strike. Absolutely, and you can play on Spellblade.
So what it does is it combines the actions, 2 actions. It combines the attacking action of Mana Strike, and it combines the casting of Meteor, which, by the way, is super clunky. So that's like what you're getting in return for the Rat City Spear in this regard.
So just for a second before we continue. So the community unique item so far, over these weeks of voting that we've had, we know that it's going to be a 2-handed spear. We know that the intent of the item is going to be for mage. And we know that the theme of the item, it's not going to be a theme for Tri-Elemental. The theme is going to be the Lost Refuge, and in parentheses, Rat City. So those are the 3
we're just going to
things
call it the Rat City Spear. It doesn't matter what they're going to name it.
I don't know what the Rat City thing has to do with any of the uniques. So like Rat City is like anti-void. Like, how about all these void things? Like, okay, sure, yeah, they're fighting against the void. Let's make a bunch of void things, but none of them are like thematic to Rat City in any way.
Well, maybe
the ideology maybe
like the
take
mage
the void and shove it back in their faces.
I guess so, but Rat City lost, so they didn't really do that.
Alternate timeline, Mcfluffin. You're wearing too much.
Okay.
Well, yeah, alternate
timey-wimey
where
stuff.
Rat City Radio stays alive and they make a podcast.
So I'm gonna tell you my vote right now. I've already voted on this thing, and it's kind of in the same vein as things that I've talked about in the past. I want to vote for on melee crit, you get Ellie Nova.
I do too. I wanted to bypass the cooldown, the ridiculous cooldown on the Ignite version, so you can play like a crit Ignite Ellie Nova with the gigantic AoE. But of course, that'll never happen now because now we're getting Devouring Orb Plus.
So I like that better than Volcanic Orb because at least it's a new playstyle technically. Sure. But Elemental Nova doesn't need a new playstyle. Dropping freaking meteors from melee is what you need, and we have nothing.
You know my problem with meteor.
When's the last time you heard
of Elemental Nova? There's like one playstyle you play.
There's a bunch of playstyles. When's the last time you heard someone say, "You know what, Mana Strike is freaking amazing. I love it." You could now have an amazing Mana Strike that drops meteors on things' faces.
Utility, but yeah,
it's great for utility, but like damage wise, it's good. And actually, you can make it clear, but
you could Mana Strike with the Velatria set and have arc, or you could have
that could work.
Lightning Blast going off as lightning damage.
Try to kill Lagon with that. Tell me how it goes, because I've tried it. It's not fun. It's 20 minutes. Now drop a meteor on Lagon's face with Mana Strike, and now we're talking.
It's not going to hit him. It's too far.
Put crit vuln on the meteor one, so that there's a reason to be attacking a bunch.
So my rationale for wanting the Ellie Nova on crit is that on crit is something that any mastery in any class can do. So you can have you can have an Ellie Nova proccing as a, flurry rogue, for example. Or you could use
Warpath. But it has a 1-second cooldown, though.
You could use Warpath.
It's got no skill tree. It's almost going to. I mean, you might use it for like ailments.
I want to vote for something that could be used for a different mastery. The fact that it's Mana Strike and like Mana Strike procs meteor.
Okay, what you could do with the spear.
You could do that with meteor too, though. You could absolutely do that.
No,
with
you
meteor.
Can't though, because it's Mana Strike. So you can't.
Oh, right, that's true.
Oh, yeah, that's the point. That's what we're getting at. No, the idea is with the Ellie Nova on melee crit hit, right? You could play like a Rive, like Forge Guard or something like that. And, well, we're already going down a rabbit hole, but still, you could play a Rive Forge Guard, you could crit, and that Ellie Nova could be applying ailments, right? Extra ailments that you consume for the fizz portion. And that would be great. That would be actually kind of great.
Okay.
Yeah, I have less of a like if you vote for Ellie Nova one, I'm less concerned like that. Yeah, I can see why like that's making new builds kinda, not really, but kinda.
There's a possibility. As long as there's the possibility, that's what matters.
It's more big brain to me than like the Volcanic Orb, where it's just like, can I go slower with Volcanic Orb, make it purple?
None of us like Volcanic Orb. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I mean, none of us like Volcanic Orb because it sucks right now. If Volcanic Orb
it's not a new play style,
then we'd be happy. I agree.
Every unique that has ever come out that says, "Hey, we don't want you to use a movement skill," has been terrible. How's this one going to be any different?
Guy, can you imagine a unique item that removes damage from your build?
Beyond's Charge is pretty good. It makes you not want to use your Maul or your Surge until you get more damage, which is fine.
Well, but you still use it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a very
you don't use it at all. Yeah,
like, just don't use it at all. I mean, yeah, the problem with this is if it has an infinite duration, it's broken.
Yeah, it's just busted.
If it doesn't have an infinite duration, it's garbage.
Sucks. Yep.
And
there's no in between here.
we also have to get over the fact that Volcanic Orb's not a good skill, but what this might do, and I'm happy with this, it might make them rework Volcanic Orb faster.
There's
That's
so
what
many
Zakar
things.
wants and why he keeps going for it. But like that,
There's
that's
so many things that need to be reworked at this point.
I mean, that's a big leap of faith.
Orb.
Where the other two don't.
Volcanic Orb.
I actually like Volcanic Orb too, but like this isn't fixing Volcanic Orb.
Well,
and the other two uniques actually just work. They don't need a rework.
What's gonna happen is Zizarin or another big streamer is gonna play the game. They're gonna drop the spear. They're gonna use it. They're gonna see that it's absolutely bad because Volcanic Orb is bad, and then EHG's like, oh, Volcanic Orb looks terrible. We gotta fix it, and then they'll fix it.
It's like,
this is not 500 IQ play. This is 1,000 IQ
We need to
play.
buff it.
This is 1,000 IQ. Where let's put in a really awful unique,
so that you don't have to add it.
People
in now.
will
they can
play
add
it
when
and say it's terrible, so that they'll get Volcanic Orb fixed. All right.
Yes.
I'm kind of on board now.
All right, so we're all voting for Volcanic Orb. Perfect.
Well,
to make a terrible unique, so they make Volc Orb better. Yeah, this is great.
Well, I mean, the unique would be fine if Volcanic Orb was like fine. You know what I mean? Like,
but that means you don't need the unique.
You could actually hit yourself with shrapnel a bunch. Like, you could stand in the Volcanic Orb thing and get like 10 shrapnel on you. So whatever the bonus is, it's still going to be fine. It's just the problem is like then you're playing Volcanic Orb and then you have Volcanic Orb issues.
Yeah, then you're playing Volcanic Orb and not teleporting.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
One thing I will say about the community voting for this current stage of the unique item, it is a little bit interesting. So for the like primary interaction, I was surprised at how pigeonholed these choices were from EHG. Like we've had like a couple options here, a couple options there for these previous couple weeks, but like for this, it's like, well, hey, all right, community, do you want an item that on Mana Strike, melee, crit, you cast Meteor, or do you want this thing that gives you movement speed if the shrapnel hits you and you don't use teleport, and also this? Like it's very, very specific.
The problem is they didn't tell us, at least I don't think they told us when I was reading the first post, that the forum posts on the thing was going to determine what choices we have in terms of the Volcanic Orb thing, right? Like these were all forum posts on the other forum post. I didn't know that until now, and I'm pretty sure you guys didn't know that either. So all of these choices that we have are suggestions they had on the forum post. Now,
people typed these in?
These are all ideas from the community.
I had no idea.
I had no idea too, and that was the problem. Is we had no idea, so now we feel disenfranchised because we didn't know that, right? And fine, like I'm not angry. I'm just more like they could have. I think they told us, but like they told us in like a sentence or something, and like if they said like, hey, like all these forum posts are going to give us the choices, I would have made a forum post.
Yeah,
I wanted that Red City Radio spear where like you copy your you have a bunch of clones that like shoot out like lightning blasts for you. That would have been great. Like I obviously it's whatever the community chooses at this point. Like at this point, it's already set in. But maybe in the future, if they do this again, that would probably be a good idea to tell us that like the forum posts are going to determine what the unique effect at the end is going to have.
I've actually got an idea that I think would be way better if they do this again a second time. So instead of doing it the way they did, I think they should do 1 week. People submit their ideas. Week 2, you have an NCAA style bracket where things are already seated, right? Like, so you have 2 unique ideas going up against each other, and just like there's a whole bunch of these, and you vote on each one of them, which one you like best. The next week, the winners go on to the next part of the bracket, and you keep doing this until you get a final 2, and you vote on those, and then the winner takes all.
Well, they still have to vote on. Well, what they would do is they would vote who it gets for, what item it is, what item base, and then they could do that.
Just create the whole unique concept. People, 1 week, you're like, all right, come up with a unique and tell us about it.
Well,
and then they put that up against another unique.
Than that. Like, it's like, come up with a unique mage spear, and then I think that would be fun.
No, it's just like whatever crazy unique ideas you guys have. Whatever crazy unique ideas, and then EHG is like, all right, we're going to see
my way of getting
maybe you don't even see, maybe just randomize it. What's that?
This is my way of getting my cool like unique items in the game.
Yeah, you got a great idea, and you're like, how do I get this in? I don't have $1,000.
Exactly.
Like, okay,
done.
Well, the problem is if the problem is if a choice that gets chosen that they can't implement in the game for some sort of reason,
It
then
doesn't
feels
make it in the
terrible,
tournament.
right?
They choose what makes it in the
gets
tournament.
vetted out of the
Okay,
beginning.
well,
Sure.
then that would be fine.
Yeah, no, they're curating the first week, right? Like, well, we can't do that, so that's just not in the tournament. And then they pick all the ones that they think they can do, and they put them all in the tournament. And then the first, we go week by week through and cut it down until you get to the last two, and then those head off. They face off for the final vote, and then winner is the unique.
Cool.
Am I the only one that thinks that like I feel really bad for the person who's like designing the art and designing the name for the thing? Like, oh, this name works perfectly for the art. It's like the Lost Refuge Spear or something, and it's like Rat City Spear. And then like a new player is gonna come around, they're gonna drop it, and they're gonna go to one of our streams or something, or YouTube or whatever, and be like, oh, is there a use for the Lost Refuge Spear? I'm like, wait, what? What is that? And then they
oh, you
link
mean
it,
Rat City?
and they're like, oh, you mean the Rat City Spear? Yeah.
Dude, if I was making that unique, I'd just be like, all right, here's a stick with a rat on the end of it. There's your Rat City Spear.
No, they should put it in the flavor text, the Rat City part, and it'd be
no,
fine.
no, it's a rat.
Can it be like
on a pole?
Can it be
stick.
like rat on crit? Like whenever you hit, like a rat falls down
Dude,
from the
that'd be
sky
sick.
instead of a meteor?
Ratatouille Spear.
What if it was on crit? It drops a meteor that has a splash effect of a bunch of rats that go around and fight stuff for like 5 seconds.
I would vote for it. I would vote for it.
I think this is a good example, though, of how we have a. This is a very good example of a unique item that we don't like because of the fact it's so tied to a skill. Like for instance, like with like Elemental Nova on Melee Crit, like what Perry was saying, it's generic so that. You know,
it also makes it busted. Let's be realistic. You guys want it because it'll be busted.
It's a 1 second cooldown. How could it be busted?
I'm sure it's
gonna be.
Everything's busted.
If it's not busted, it sucks. You know that.
Well, that's the whole game.
Look at Ashes. If it's like a 10th of
Is
Ashes
Vanna's
power,
Strike Meteor really busted or sucks? Like, I think it's probably going to be relatively balanced.
Well, no. What I mean is like now you're playing it only on Mage. That's what was the point we were getting at. Like
for instance, a mage unique.
Really
you could have Warpath, and while Warpath channeling, you get adaptive damage, and then you have smites going off and meteors and flames.
I get it that you guys want like the ultra big brain, like I can use this anywhere in a way that nobody ever imagined. I'm so cool.
Well, I want
some
brain.
Strike Meteor. Like it's
I want some brain.
See, all of this arguing is at fault though, because it doesn't matter because we're gonna get Devouring Orb. Plus.
You're right. Yeah, we're getting the Devouring Orb. Whatever.
Well,
yeah,
it depends. Like, I really like a unique that gives us a bunch of increased mana regen because that fixes one of the biggest problems with like Volcanic Orb is the fact it costs a bunch of mana for no reason. So I like that. Like, if it was like released and it was decent, like it could make Volcanic Orb viable. But then at the same time, it's like. Are we going to be doing that where we just add uniques to make skills viable instead of
Then it's back.
And if it makes it viable, then good luck on your rework because like, there's no reason So you just need the unique, and you're only ever going to ever have Void Volcanic Orb. Well,
it says directly casting a Volcanic Orb, but then you just use.
I mean, how often do you
have to scale Void damage on a? I guess scaling Void damage on a Mage isn't that bad because you do
maybe the next mastery for Mage ends up being something that has like generic damage multipliers. In it instead of strictly elemental, instead of attack based.
Rune Master?
Maybe it has
Rune Master.
Maybe it's got something else in there.
Well, you could just attribute stack. That works too.
Sure. I think with that, we are just about an hour and a half into the podcast. The discussion of the community design unique item was more vibrant than I thought it was going to be, but that makes me very happy. So I'm glad that we got that conversation tacked on to the end of this podcast here. So this has been episode 6. We've talked about all sorts of things, talked about 085E, got the new like unique items added, or like, I guess, tailored down a little bit, some set items being reworked. We talked about the interview that happened with Zizarin, which most notably confirmed that apparently multiplayer is happening this year, 2022.
I love how that's the only thing that matters from the entire thing. That's
listen,
like,
the rest of the Zizarin interview
that matters to me.
if you watch on a weekly basis the dev streams that happened with Mike, then you're probably familiar with everything that happened in the Ziz interview. Like, it was nice to know who Stans was. I didn't know this person beforehand.
Stans
is a big deal.
And he had some really good, insightful things to say. I'm going to continue listening to the podcast about that interview. I'm about halfway through it right now. But I've liked it so far, but it's not really like new information. The thing that I took away the most was just that multiplayer bit. So with that said, I want to thank you, Mcfluffin, for joining us here on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was an absolute blast. Really enjoyed myself.
I think we'll have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
I do want to let you know, if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube or right here live on Twitch, next week we're going to have an early episode. So instead of having it on Friday after the dev stream, we're going to be having it on Thursday in order to accommodate our hyper competitive guest who's going to be joining us. He wants as much time on the weekend to do the weekend race as possible.
It's going to be the Bash Ashes stream.
Because we're going to have Lizard IRL right here on the podcast as well. So be sure to tune in for that next week. The
whole hour is just going to be Ashes bad. And here's why.
And then Dread, thank you once again for being my co-host. I always appreciate it.
Long live Rat City.
All right. Twitch chat, thank you for watching live. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, just let us know where you're watching it so we can make sure that your watching experience is as good as possible. And then for all of us here at, God, I almost said Rat City Radio. For all of us here at Epic Epoch Podcast, we'll see you next time.